Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Let's get straight into it, Tottenham Hotspur, Watford. There's two different ways to take it. It's whether you look at the first 80 minutes, maybe 85 minutes, which were pretty awful, to be honest. Or whether you look at the last 5 minutes of normal time, another 4 minutes, wasn't it, of added time, and maybe see that as a bit of a turning point, perhaps. I think it remains to be seen whether it actually is or not yet, but there was certainly some fight in that last period. But let's come to that later, because we have to go straight into that first 80, 85 minutes, because it was just shambolic. I don't know if it's the fans out there are feeling the same or not, but it's kind of like, I think Pochettino, the biggest criticism I can probably have of him right now is the fact that he's staying almost insanely loyal to a group of players that are just failing him. He very much is standing in front of these players, protecting them, talking them up, bigging them up, saying that they're going to get better. And they haven't got his back at all. They're hiding behind it. They're just not providing the fight, the spirit, the kind of just the basic human nature of battling in some of these matches. I mean, yesterday was just, honestly, if Watford had anything about them in attacking sense, the game could have been done by half-time, seriously. And also, if VAR actually overturned referees' decisions ever, I think that Vertonghen challenge on Dele would have been a penalty. We all saw the replays, we saw the way he dived in. And we're going to come to Vertonghen in a minute, because I think that's part of a bigger picture with him. Spurs could have been done. They weren't. They managed to get a bit of a lucky break. And Watford missed a series of chances as well. They just kept getting these breakaways. 3-on-2s, 4-on-2, I think there was one in the second half. I get late in the game, you're chasing it, but some of these were happening in the first half. It was just appalling, just defending, really. But as I say, the biggest criticism for me right now of Pochettino, formation is another, but we'll come to that, because I don't entirely agree with some of the flack he's getting at. I do disagree. I do agree that personnel-wise in that formation was wrong. But his loyalty as players, I mean, I asked the first question in the press conference afterwards. It's always a very general one, the first one. It's essentially, what do you think of the match? How do you analyse performance? That sort of thing. And there was a part of me that's thinking, go on, just absolutely give it to those players. Absolutely tell a few of them some home truths, because they're clearly, some of them just aren't fighting for the shirt, the club, the manager, whatever you want to call it. They're just not doing it. But he didn't. It was classic Poch. It was, he looked, obviously, as I said earlier, about the Dele Alli goal, that being a turning point. He admitted the first half was, I think in his words, not very good. It's about as far as he was going to go. And he just said, the defending wasn't great, the goal conceded was poor, but then obviously he kept harking back to the 7-2 against Bayern Munich, and then what happened at Brighton, and saying that this is just a case of slowly building up the confidence step by step, and getting this point hopefully is the first step. I get that. But I think that you just want to see a bit of passion, a bit of, this is a Latin American guy who we see him on a touchline. I've seen a lot of people saying he was sitting down the whole match. He wasn't at all. He was actually up a fair bit. I saw him quite a bit prowling on the edge of his touchline. He started off, I think he was wearing some kind of gilet type thing, and he took it off because he was getting quite hot, because he was actually going up and down, shouting and various stuff at the players. Our press point is actually quite a good area to kind of look down on the dugouts. And while he did sit down on occasions, and maybe that's when people who weren't there or possibly watching a telly or any way they can see it maybe missed the moment, but he was up quite a lot. I want to see that passion kind of in the press conference as well, and I think that's when you connect with managers even more. What I would say, I would totally understand there's the reverse logic of, if you hammer them too much, then you've got no chance, absolutely no chance of getting any of them up and moving, and then it starts to turn toxic and players turning other players against them. We certainly saw with Tim Sherwood in his very, very brief kind of tenure at Tottenham, that I remember him turning, I think maybe it was after a defeat to Liverpool, ironically, with Liverpool coming up this weekend. I think it was after a match like that, and he absolutely lost the players from that moment on. So I get you can't be over the top, but there is a certain element where you can just say, look, Pochettino's whole philosophy is about the collective. It's about this group of players. It's about all of them fighting for one another. And he said a couple of weeks back he wants the whole team to be pressing. He's annoyed that that pressing thing has gone. But the problem is if the players are feeling downhearted, not confident, not working hard enough, that pressing isn't going to come. We know, I've said it enough times, the pressing version of Tottenham Hotspur is the best version out there. If all the team isn't in symmetry, all going at one objective, that's going to happen. And I want to start at the back because I'm going to make it very clear that these defenders, certainly the bulk of them, have done brilliant things for Tottenham over the years. They've been fantastic players. But unfortunately for me, if you are now going to build your foundations of your team on 4 players, essentially, well, no, Davinson Sanchez was playing, but he only played for a half, and I actually thought it was quite harsh on him to come off at half-time, to be honest. But if you're going to base your foundation on these 4 defenders, all of whom are probably very unlikely to be at Tottenham next season, where's that solid base? Where's that solid foundation? Where are the players you know have a vested interest in Tottenham Hotspur and want to make sure that it's the very best? And I'm not saying that they don't want that. I'm just saying it's human nature. If you know you're likely to leave a job, that you're not going to give 100%. You're not going to sacrifice everything, put your body on the line and everything. And I just think that's human nature. I don't think it's a deliberate thing. I just think it's a case of, why should I track back? Essentially, let's let these other guys deal with it kind of thing. That sort of mentality. And, you've got Danny Rose, who in the past had kind of hinted at moving on. Last summer, he was told he could move if he could find a club. He couldn't find a club. I'd probably give Danny Rose a pass in terms of the passion. I think that's never been his failing. He's always shown plenty of gusto and passion. With him, just the quality level has horrifically gone into the floor. Obviously, we saw against it for England and we saw against Spurs yesterday. Honestly, the defensive lapses in concentration are absolutely atrocious from him at the moment. And going the other way, might as well just not bother. The ball, Spurs were having to go down the right so many times because down the left, Rose is just a dead end. He just was not crossing into the box. He's got this annoying habit of getting into reasonable positions and looking for a foul rather than looking for the cross. And I don't know where that's come from. I don't remember him used to do that when he was in his kind of peak. He was like a rampaging left back who would absolutely get into the box and try and put the ball in as quickly and often low. His best crosses were often low crosses, and that just seems to have disappeared. So I'd maybe give him a pass on terms of maybe not trying the best for the club. I think that's probably a bit harsh when it comes to Rose, but quality level's absolutely gone. So that's one big experience side of your defence. Alderweireld and Vertonghen, terrific partnership, one of the best in Europe they've been. Whatever has happened in the last, I suppose 2019, it's just gone to pot. Whether it's a case of them getting older, whether it's a case that they're now both in the final 9 months or so of their contracts, I don't know. But Vertonghen, for me, I've been banging on about Vertonghen in recent years as being probably Spurs' best defender and probably best left-back as well. But just something seems to have happened, maybe over the summer, in terms of his pace. He didn't have a lot of it to begin with, don't get me wrong, but he seems to have lost another yard or so. And that's making a big difference in terms of if his positioning is slightly off, which it really was yesterday and probably has been in a few games this season. He hasn't got the reaction time or speed to make up for it. And especially with the Dele challenge that should have been a penalty, he was miles away. Honestly, pretty much tried to hack him down about 3 times before he eventually brought him down. It's such a shame to see because I think he has been such a terrific defender for Spurs. But I just feel like there's a real decline has settled in, and this is purely speculation. But I do wonder whether some of the issues early in the season, with him being left out and some of the pre-season concerns, maybe, and this is purely me guesswork. I don't want to say that this is what's happened at all, but maybe Pochettino noticed that. Maybe that was said to Vertonghen. Maybe it was brought up that he's going to have to work harder the older he gets on kind of overcoming the things that age just unfortunately naturally brings. Alderweireld. For me, Alderweireld up to this point, up to yesterday, had been probably Spurs' most consistent defender. Despite all the talk about his future, I felt he'd actually kept a kind of a regular kind of consistent game going. Yesterday, wow. We know Alderweireld's got a beautiful crossfield ball that he plays, and when it works, it is absolutely sumptuous. It is superb. We've seen Dele score from it. We've seen various fullbacks coming into his diagonal crossfield balls. Yesterday, honestly, he was like one of those, you get a tennis ball machine that just shoots out balls for people to hit back. It's like one of those, but it got stuck and it was just going in the wrong direction. He was just pinging these crossfield balls at nobody in particular. And Pochettino, if anyone's heard me say this before, I'm sorry, but Pochettino hates those crossfield balls. He wants to build up slowly from the back, or not slowly, he wants to build up from the back, kind of spreading the ball wide and all that. And when you're pinging those, if they're working, great. If they're not, like yesterday, I think he gave the ball away more than anyone else. I think I saw the stats. Obviously, you could look at that stat and say, well, at least he was trying more. But it's just distribution was terrible. He wasn't alone in that. Winks, who I've often bigged up, had a poor day for distribution yesterday, and that's a couple in a row now. He needs to get back on his game, especially as you had the England one in the middle. And then you've got Serge Aurier. Serge Aurier was just Serge Aurier. He's so inconsistent. There were times when his defending was just all over the shop. There were times when he was going forward and just putting no quality on the crosses at all. But then there are other times when he did a great block to save what was probably a certain goal in the second half. And there were some crosses late on that were quite decent. There was just no one attacking them. But just for me, he's another player. He said twice, I think it is, in the last month about how he wants to leave Spurs and how he wanted in the summer and won't confirm whether January he'll be looking to move or not. You cannot build your trusted foundations on 4 experienced players, all 4 of them, who, like I say, probably not going to be here next season. And it's no massive slight on them in terms of their talent. They've been, especially, Rose, Vertonghen and Alderweireld have been great servants to Spurs over the years. They've been terrific talents, among the best defenders in Europe in their day. Their head's not in the game. It's just not. I'm sure they're telling Pochettino otherwise. I'm sure they're saying they're ready for it. And Pochettino, as I said, loyal to a fault. I think he's sticking by them when they're just not doing it for him. We always say it, that teams have to be based on form. And if the players aren't in form, you've got to replace them. They've got to be changed. And there's got to be players that have got Pochettino's back. I don't think it's any coincidence. The 3 players that came off the bench yesterday, Son, Lamela and Dele, absolutely raised the game. All 3 of them were fighting. I don't know if you've seen the video clip of Son in the first half, like smashing his fist down when it must have been, I presume, when Watford scored their goal. He was livid. This is a guy that's absolutely furious as what's happening at Tottenham. This isn't a guy that's just like, oh, well. He is so angry. And as soon as he came in, I felt they upped their game. The second half was better. He hit the crossbar. Lamela, same, came on. He was making forward runs, trying to play players in. It was just so dull as dishwater and predictable in the first half. It was woeful. And on Dele, even late on, he was playing these forward passes, trying to take players on. For early balls, I think that's the thing, isn't it? There was so much slow, hesitant, tippy-tappy rubbish side to side. Whereas you need fast, there's nothing better, whether it's a pass or a shot, than an early ball. It doesn't let the defence, or if it's a goalkeeper with a shot, have time to set. And it just makes such a difference. And this is what I kind of feel like the other criticism I'd say of Poch yesterday wasn't so much the formation. A lot of people going, oh, how can you play 5 defenders against Watford, blah, blah, blah. I get how that looks on paper, but actually, Spurs have a look back. Spurs have often played with a back 3 against Watford. It's been a tactic they've had a lot of success from. And if you're looking at it as a back 5, then yeah, it looks defensive, but it's not meant to be. Actually, it was meant to give Spurs more attacking threat because those 2 wing-backs should essentially be wingers. Wing-backs didn't do their jobs. They just didn't. It's as simple as that. They let the system down a lot. However, my Poch criticism, there is one in there, is the fact that if you're going to play with a back 3, you can afford to have one of those 2 central midfielders as a more progressive player. And I think playing Sissoko and Winks in there, who aren't going to be as effective when you're approaching the final third, it was a waste of the formation. That's where, I know he took him off halfway through against Brighton. I don't know why. Maybe just because he wasn't actually very good that day. But Tanguy Ndombele should have started yesterday's match. He should have. You play him alongside maybe Sissoko or Winks, and then suddenly you've got someone extra in that middle who is going to thread balls through. He's going to look for the runs of Kane, look for the runs of Ali. Winks and Sissoko just didn't do that. So then, yes, you were becoming a more defensive unit than an attacking one against the league's bottom side at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And that for me, they're the two biggest Pochettino criticisms, I think, from yesterday, was the loyalty for the players. He made 7 changes, but ultimately still used the big core of players that have been letting him down. And that not the formation, but the personnel within that formation. But don't get me wrong, for me, players have got to take the brunt of it. Pochettino's made mistakes. That's certainly the case. But for me, the players, honestly, it was criminal in that first half. 80 minutes maybe. Just the lack of enthusiasm. Some of the tracking back was horrific. Honestly, I just couldn't be bothered. The wing backs clearly were just thinking to themselves, well, we're meant to be wingers today, essentially. You're not. You do have to become about 5 when the other team's attacking, and they just weren't coming back at all. It was really, really poor stuff. And let's not just harp on about defence, because there are others that I don't think should get away with it. And this may be an unpopular decision, but Harry Kane. Harry Kane is Tottenham's probably one world-class player. Monday night, we saw him be a captain, a leader for England, with all the racism stuff that was going on. He kind of rose above that, led his players, kind of was the voice and the face of the team. 3 assists, 1 goal. He was everywhere. Came back to play for Tottenham. Honestly, you barely would have known he was there yesterday. They're looking, if you've got one world-class player, he's your inspiration. He's your leader. He's taking on, driving forward. Barely touched the ball first half. They switched it up in the second half so that Lucas was more advanced and Kane was kind of coming back into a number 10 role just to get more touches of the ball. Did barely anything. Honestly, it was so disappointing. And I really am loath to criticise Kane because he's been so important for Spurs over the years. And even this season, he's got flack. But yeah, I think he's been involved in something like 20 goals, whether it's goals or assists. He just wasn't there for the team yesterday. He wasn't... didn't seem to be driving them on vocally. He certainly wasn't trying to make things happen. He just looked more frustrated and despondent, which... if he's going to be the captain, and Pochettino and him have got a lot to thank each other for, there should be a bond there. There certainly has been over the years. 2 guys that have done a lot for each other. They should be fighting for each other. And I think Kane should be absolutely fighting for the manager as well out there. Perhaps I'm being harsh, but I just didn't see it at all. And I think the other big problem you've got as well is that this Tottenham Hotspur team was built around a peak Christian Eriksen. The Christian Eriksen that we all know as one of the Premier League's probably best playmakers of recent years. If you are not having him in the team, or you are getting the Eriksen that we've seen this season, then the kind of system falls apart because Pochettino has become so reliant on Eriksen to, like a game like yesterday, you've got 10, 11 players behind the ball a lot of the time. Eriksen, at his peak, was able to pick balls through, was able to find little clever bits of pockets of space still to play others in. The likes of Kane, Ali, Son, Lucas Moura would have all been found with balls wherever they ran. You take Eriksen out of that team, and especially yesterday, there was no playmaker, there was no creativity whatsoever, and it was suddenly incredibly obvious how important Eriksen is to that team. I think we saw it in the first game of the season against Villa when he came off the bench. And that's why maybe you needed a Lamella, someone that's just going to take risks with their passes earlier on in the game. It's frustrating, I think, more for the fact that Pochettino and the board, Levy, whoever you want to pin it on, has allowed this scenario to develop where Spurs have had this player for so long, become so reliant on him, and he's about to leave. And you could say that Giovanni Lo Celso finally, after 6 years, is the Eriksen possible replacement, but we don't know yet. We haven't seen him. He's been injured. Pochettino's been hamstrung with that, but it's just this lack of foresight and planning, which is quite scary. And to be so reliant on a player who wants to leave the club is mind-boggling. It really is. I thought positives. I still saw him getting flack after game, but Dele Alli, I saw little flashes and glimpses of the old Dele Alli in there. It was a tough game for him. I still prefer him in that role behind Kane. He wasn't really playing that yesterday. It was more of a floating role behind 2 strikers. But he was there for the team at the end. Right place, right time, battled away and got the goal and essentially gave Spurs a little kind of kiss of life, as it were, when it looked like they were on the floor. There's still a lot more to come from him. He's still only 23. We forget that sometimes. But I felt with him there was fight. There was battling. He was getting stuck in. I quite liked... It sounds silly to say because obviously it's not within the rules, but I quite liked the brawl that went on, mini brawl that went on after the Spurs goal, because Spurs were flying after that. They were absolutely trying everything they could. They just didn't quite have the quality to do it. But there was a little fight. I think Ali got involved. Probably Lamella, knowing Lamella, would have got involved as well. And it just showed that they do give a crap. They are going to try and do what they can. And I like that as well. I want to go back to Pochettino's press conference though afterwards. Another little criticism of him as well was the daft moment for me where he brought up the atmosphere. I know what he's saying, and I think we all know. If we're going to be entirely honest, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, as it was at Wembley, it can have very, very quiet moments. Yesterday we had half-time boos. Probably, I'm trying to think if they're the first this season, and they might be. They were very loud, and they let the players know very clearly what the fans thought. The atmosphere isn't the greatest. If we're going to be entirely honest, the NFL games actually had a higher consistent noise. And the NFL games, it's weird because obviously they're not all fans from the two teams that are playing as well, so it's mixed. With the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for Spurs matches, you get these great build-ups of noise at pockets of the match, but ultimately there's a lot of quiet moments where the crowd are looking to be entertained. We accept that, we know that, and a lot of that is to do with the football that's being served up, and I totally understand that. To be fair, Pochettino did say he understood why, but just don't bring it up. Don't say it. You don't need to say it. At the moment, certainly until yesterday, Poch had a very big majority of the fans are siding with him over the players. They want the players ditched. They want Poch to be given backing. When you're going to say silly stuff like that and say that, the atmosphere wasn't the one we love, that does make it tough, don't say it. Don't say it. He later went on to praise the fans and said, that last 20 minutes, they were brilliant. They pushed us on. Because I think there's a little thing inside of his head where he's like, oh man, I probably shouldn't have said that, should I, about the fans? And he shouldn't have. Think it by all means, but never ever criticise the fans who are going to the game, paying their money and being served up utter crap by the players. Those players deserve to be told they're appalling. I know it's a confidence thing and I know they're struggling with confidence at the moment. But they need to be told as well, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And then then it's up to them to improve their performances. And then the fans, it's a snowball effect, isn't it? The fans then support them. Shock horror, everyone's happy and you suddenly get to where you're going to. The other moment I thought was quite interesting. He got a little bit angry, maybe, at a question about the January transfer thing. The question was, are you now maybe thinking that you might change your mind about January transfers, especially if results continue like this? He didn't like that. He kind of said, you can't take everything I say as a definite yes or no. I've never said a definite yes or no. For me, if we do need transfers in January, we will do them, and the club needs to be ready if we do need them. It was a massive walking back. Pochettino does this. He is quite contradictory. That's what comes as talking so much. I'm going to do the same probably, no doubt, with these videos and the things I write. I probably say or write something completely different a few weeks on to what I said before because opinions change and sometimes you forget what you say. And with Pochettino, I think he does that quite a lot. We know a couple of days ago, he said very definitively, if it was up to me, I wouldn't sign any new players in January. I know why he said it. He said it for exactly what I said at the very start of this video. It's a loyalty thing. It's about trying to build this fragile confidence up, saying to these players, no, I'm not looking to replace you. You crack on. I believe in you. And that's essentially what it was. He knows deep down in January Spurs are going to have to do some business. They are. I think they're going to lose a couple of players. I think the likes of Wanyama, maybe Aurier will move on. I think they'll struggle to move on the out-of-contract trio. Purely because why do they need to go when they can sign a deal in January for the summer to go on a free? But there will be changes, and I think Spurs will have to make changes. So I think it's just keep it vague. Just say we'll see when we get there. It's as simple as that. But he says things that are quite definitive and then later walks back on them, which isn't a good look at all. However, I've been moaning a bit about Poch in this one. Not as much as the players. I'm going to still maintain it's the players for me. I've said this before and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I hate it with an absolute passion when you see managers get sacked when the players just haven't put in the effort And then you'll see, shock horror, someone else will come in, even if they're a manager that is nowhere near the standard of the manager who just got sacked. Suddenly the players raise their game and everyone forgets, and it's all the manager, oh, look what he's done with these great players. No, the players let the club down, and then they went on and decided, oh, we've got to impress a new manager, otherwise we're not going to play. It's so mind-numbingly boring, and it happens so much. And I think we're in a scenario now where some people are disagreeing. I think there's growing numbers, especially after that performance in the first 80 minutes. But I think you've got to back Pochettino. I know people have their criticisms of him, their qualms with what he does and various way he talks, which can be a bit annoying in certain for the fans. I can understand the kind of flip-flopping these opinions on stuff, and certainly players sticking with certain players. But Tottenham Hotspur is going to change enormously this summer. It is. The rebuild that's been called upon for years by Pochettino is going to happen. Whether they like it or not, whoever's at the helm, this team is going to be absolutely ripped to pieces, and you are going to have Vertonghen, Alderweireld, Eriksen probably all moving on, Rose, Aurier moving on, Wanyama going, possibly other players, maybe the likes of someone like Dele will go, maybe some other fringe players. Lucas Moura may get fed up with not playing so much, although I would say, if I'm going to be incredibly, I was going to be honest, I just think yesterday is another game where he proved this from the start. It's just not quite there, is it? I still feel he's a better impact sub than he is a starter. But I know other people have different opinions on that, because he tries hard, he gets his head down, he runs, he's direct. There's just not a lot else to it. But again, if I'm going to criticise Kane for what he did with a lack of service, probably the same has to go to Lucas Moura as well. But back to my original point. Pochettino, whether you hate him or not, he is one of the best managers in the world. He was just voted in the top 3 managers in the world by FIFA. That is actually an official thing. He is one of the best managers in the world. What he's done for Tottenham over the years has been massively overachieving. We can't rewrite history. We can't dress it up as anything else. He has done big things with Tottenham Hotspur on the pitch, while it's been absolute chaos behind the scenes as they build a new stadium, etc. I totally understand the argument that things are going stale. They maybe have hit a ceiling with this current squad. Some might say with the manager. That's where I disagree, though. I think if you're going to say there's a ceiling, I think it is with the squad. I think Pochettino deserves the chance to change things. He deserves, if there's a staleness to it, then I think it's with the players. The players are the ones that have been here for, in some cases, even longer than Pochettino, the likes of Eriksen and Vertonghen. I think that's where the changes have to be made. I think Pochettino now has to be brave. And I've said this before, and I'm quite surprised, to be honest, for a guy who was incredibly brave in a lot of his career, at Southampton, Espanyol, when he first came to Spurs as well. I think he's lost a bit of that. I think he's just kind of, this loyalty thing is kind of almost sort of letting the players that are currently there, oh, you sort it out, and not wanting to offend, and and maybe being too friendly with them as well. It's time to throw that to the side. Whatever happens, it can't be worse than it is right now. Spurs have been dire, and I don't mean Eric. Honestly, they've been absolutely woeful. Lack of creativity, fragile at the back. Bring in these players that Pochettino has worked with and has got big things, big kind of hopes for. The likes of Foyth and Sanchez, they're his players. Get them in there. Dele desperately wanted him this summer. Get starting him. Lo Celso and Sessignon will be coming, they're back in full training. Maybe likely to be subs in the next few weeks while they get their fitness up, but start getting them involved. Start regenerating this team. We've got the young players. We've got Tanganga, did very well in pre-season. He's very young and raw. He's only 20. Get him in there. Get him some minutes. Get him some confidence in him. Troy Parrott, he's only 17. We know this. Stick the kid on the bench a couple of times. Just feel the mood change, the atmosphere. You want the supporters to be shouting and giving a great atmosphere. You stick 17-year-old Troy Parrott on that bench. Give him 5 minutes at the end of the match. watch the place, the roof will come off the place. Honestly, it's just little things that just need to be tweaked and changed and refreshed and rebuilt. And then by the time the summer comes, then Pochettino obviously will have a decision to make. Does he want to be in it for the big changes, a whole new pretty much squad of players to work with who haven't been, I don't know, fed up or finding his training sessions the same after 6 years? A whole different bunch of players, younger players. Let's not forget that as well. Pochettino works with younger players so much better than he does with older players. It's his MO. He creates these internationals out of young, promising players. And I think we've got away from that. I think Pochettino's been very patient with Levy over the years in everything that Levy's been trying to do, having no very or little money to improve the squad, giving him, not like cheaper alternatives to the players he actually wants. And I think Levy now has to show that patience back with Poch. And if it's a case of just saying, right, forget it, we kind of not quite write off the rest of this season, but we accept that this is maybe going to be a lower standard of a season because we're going to try stuff. Look at Chelsea. Look what they're doing, bringing in through the youth players, the Mounts, Abraham, Tomori at the back as well. And Zuma's come back, who's still pretty young himself. And I think Spurs may have to just go back to that kind of slightly inconsistent younger team that then has a higher ceiling than the current one because they're going to have more potential, as it were. I want to see that happen. I think, and this is my prediction, I'm sure others won't agree with me, I think you lose Pochettino, I think he goes to another club, and I think he wins silverware. I think he gets backed. People will no doubt say, but I could have won with that. I could have managed that team to a trophy, whether he goes to Italy, Spain, whatever. But I don't think it'll be that. I think it'll be in a place where suddenly he's got this new group of players, new momentum, bit more of a backing financially, and shock horror, he wins stuff. That can happen at Tottenham Hotspur. There's no reason it can't. This squad, as I say, is going to change in the summer. There's going to be funds made available. There has to be. Spurs can't afford a couple of seasons out of the Champions League with everything they're trying to pay off. They know that. They could maybe afford one. However, I still think if they can click into gear, I think the Premier League is still so inconsistent. Like I say, Chelsea are going to have their ups and downs with their young team. Arsenal certainly are still a mess at the back. They're going to have games where they're going to lose to opposition they don't expect to. Man United, we know what's happening with them. They're incredibly up and down at the moment as well. I still think the top four is there if Pochettino can stamp back his authority on this team, cast off friendships, loyalty, all of that, and absolutely start thinking about the next collective rather than the current one. And I think they can get somewhere. But it's all about patience. It's all about showing faith. And I think he's got enough of the fans still on board with him, as long as he stops saying dumb things about the atmosphere. I think he's got enough patience and faith in the fans to let him do that. I just hope the people above him do as well, and they don't make any rash decisions. It's not going to be popular. I know there's people that want Poch out, and they're getting frustrated, but I think you have to look at the overall picture for me. So that's that. I've waffled on for long enough. I'm going to leave you there. Busy week this week. We've got open training and press conference at Spurs tomorrow. Obviously, UEFA Youth League game and Champions League game on Tuesday. Red Star Belgrade. Spurs really could do with some confidence boosting there, because on Sunday we know who lies in wait at Anfield. It's Liverpool, and if things don't go very well there and it's a heavy defeat, then the whole pressure thing, just the bubble starts to get close to bursting, and that's the problem, isn't it? It's all about patience. It's all about looking at the bigger picture, but a big defeat there would make things incredibly difficult for that to be seen. So let's hope things take an upturn this week, and I shall catch you later.